getting into PlayStation because, of course, they are currently winning the console landscape by a landslide, as when it comes to the PS5 outselling the Xbox Series X and S 4-1, meaning for every Xbox Series X sold, there are at least 4 PS5 sold. So by far, PlayStation is winning the console race. But when it comes to acquiring popular IPs, it seems like Microsoft has had the overall upper hand, and they've basically outplayed PlayStation when it comes to acquiring some of the more renowned or publicly renowned IPs such as Activision when it comes to Call of Duty being on the Xbox Game Pass. But of course, that doesn't stop people from solely buying the PlayStation 5 4-1 when it comes to the Xbox Series X and S. So with that being said, the reason for this segment is getting into PlayStation's attempt to try to compete with Microsoft when it comes to acquiring IPs. And one of the rumors that went around in the gaming industry was finally confirmed from, I think it's titled hold up, I don't even know how to pronounce this. We had to get drivers to limit.
Parent of FromSoftware. Sony's stake in Kadokawa. Parent of From.
Okay, so Kadokawa. I was definitely gonna butcher that. Anyway, so as you heard, Kadokawa. That's going to be a tongue twister for me. The parent company of FromSoftware, basically, they came out and confirmed that Sony was going to offer to acquire FromSoftware, but did not due to the overall evaluation of Kadokawa. That's going to mess me up this entire time. So when it comes to that, when Sony was going to buy Kadokawa, it was going to be entirely for $675 billion, which in, it's as far as their currency, but as far as in US dollars, it was going to be $4.3 billion. So the high cost basically deterred Sony from acquiring Kadokawa. So the reason why they would spend that much money on that specific company is because of them having FromSoftware under their umbrella, as they have Elden Ring, Armored Core 6, Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree, which all 3 of those games could have been just very pivotal if it was exclusively owned by PlayStation. Because if you don't know, Elden Ring is probably one of the more innovative games that we've seen in the past 2 to 3 years. Now, when it comes to Armored Core, that was basically a continuation from software showcasing how they can jump into different genres and still develop high quality games, as Armored Core showed that it was definitely one of the better games to come out in 2023. So not only did FromSoftware have had all that success from those particular games, but also the DLC for Elden Ring, as far as Shadow of the Erdtree that came out last year, ended up getting so much praise to the point where people were arguing for it to be Game of the Year once more, because it was already Game of the Year in 2022, but with the DLC, people was trying to argue that it should also be Game of the Year twice because of the DLC. Now, of course, it did end up winning Game of the Year, because if a DLC wins Game of the Year, that sets a very interesting precedent going forward, as if a phenomenal game comes out and then DLC comes out basically replicating the game and improving upon it, should we just automatically lock in 2 years for every phenomenal game that comes out because of DLC winning Game of the Year? I think not. So that being said, that is why Sony was wanting to spend $4.3 billion on Kadokawa. I'm still gonna butcher that, but Sony and Kadokawa do plan to collaborate on live action adaptations of Kadokawa's IPs. I would have to assume that would mean an Elden Ring movie, which I don't know exactly how you would do an Elden Ring movie when the game is very pivotal when it comes to in captivating the masses, but also diving into the game to the point where you're putting at least 100+ hours into it. I don't know about y'all, but most movies are probably 1.5 hours to 3 hours long, and 3 hours is probably pushing it. So with that in mind, I don't know how they would actually do an Elden Ring movie justice when it comes to adapting it from the video game format. So, but they also are wanting to collaborate on producing or co-producing anime and expanding global distribution via Sony's Crunchyroll, and then publishing more Kadokawa games and strengthening virtual production capabilities. So as far as acquiring them, that definitely fell flat, because they probably didn't realize how much fettuccine Alfredo Kadokawa was getting. For the people out there that are perplexed or just very confused right now, I'm basically talking about money. So, because if you don't know, Elden Ring sold 28.6 million copies worldwide. And with that being said, it exceeded 30 million by February 2025. And the sustained popularity is probably why Sony was very intrigued on trying to get that as an exclusive IP. Also, when it comes to Armored Core, when that came out 2023, that game sold 3 million copies by July 2024 per Kadokawa's reports, with a strong performance exceeding expectations, and the sales reached around 3.5 to 4 million by February 2025. So the games that Kadokawa is coming out with under via FromSoftware is definitely impacting the masses to the point where now is the time to try to either get them exclusively under your umbrella or your tech, or basically collaborate with them. Because if you can't beat them, then you might as well join them. And I would think that owning them as far as a buyout would be technically beating them as far as getting them under your umbrella so that the other competition doesn't have it. But now, due to the price being way too exorbitant for you to be able to pay that amount, you basically are just co-collaborating on a lot of different IPs that are going to enhance the Sony, basically the Sony marketplace as far as what consumers can buy and view. So anyways, with that being said, there's definitely nothing that's going to come of FromSoftware's games like Elden Ring or Armored Core being exclusively for PlayStation. But when it comes to future and co-funded products via Sony and Kadokawa, we still don't know if those are going to come exclusively to PlayStation. Because, of course, now that Armored Core and Elden Ring is through the roof, basically, you know how they say in stocks to buy low and sell high? Basically, PlayStation tried to buy Kadokawa when it was at a chart-topping stock as far as how much they would have had to pay to buy it out. So now, because they can't basically buy high and then they don't want to end up selling low, right? They want to create new creations with Kadokawa to the point where you're technically buying low, because we don't know if this is not a proven concept if they come with a new anime or something like that. And then that could lead to Sony getting something from Kadokawa under them exclusively. So a lot of fans, of course, from FromSoftware did not want Sony to buy out FromSoftware because of apparently a lot of different companies have went through this, as they'll get bought out by these Microsoft, Sony corporations, right? And then coincidentally, they will end up losing a lot of creative freedom that they were promised at the very beginning of the deal, right? They say, we're going to give you this front. You're going to have all the creative control to make whatever you want. And then the deal gets signed, you get into production, and all of a sudden 15 to 16 people with suits coming in telling you how to make your game. So that I've seen that happen. I've heard that happen a lot in the gaming industry. So now FromSoftware was violently opposed to being acquired by Sony, as they didn't want loss of creative freedom. They didn't want to compete with the other PlayStation exclusives, because what's the point of being under PlayStation exclusively if games like Spider-Man, games like God of War, we've seen how those games have come, and you would think it'd be a chart topper, but because of it not being on Xbox or not Nintendo, but basically PC, right? Because it's not on Xbox or PC, you can see how you can miss out on a lot of revenue being exclusively for one platform. And then, of course, people from software, no pun intended, they basically said Sony potentially abandoning or mismanaging franchises like Bloodborne or Demon Souls. Those were the industry rumors as far as why they didn't want this buyout to happen. So, of course, everybody started to pay attention to these reports coming out, to the point where now, when it comes to Kadokawa's stake, it's increased to 10% up from 2%. So it went from 2% and 10% in the aftermath of all this news. So the biggest winners, I would think, is Kadokawa and FromSoftware, because if you don't know, now that you have all this evaluation set on the forefront and people know how much you're bringing in with your popular IPs, they're probably going to put a lot more respect on your name, especially when your next project comes out with whichever that might be. Because of course we know that Elden Ring, actually let me get the actual release date, because Elden Ring Night Rain, that's coming out at some point. Okay, so Elden Ring Night Reign is coming out May 30th, 2025. That's basically like a multiplayer battle royale type setting. So you need like 1 to 3 players, and basically it's going to be a battle royale format set in the Elden Ring world, but they're also going to bring in bosses from past Dark Souls games that will probably excite fans who are hardcore fans of just all Dark Souls games. So it's really not too much to get into. When I'm talking about acquisitions, it's definitely more of an above your pay grade type of business happening behind the scenes. But of course, from everything that I've looked up, from everything that I've researched, especially listening to a lot of gaming insiders, they did not want this deal to happen, no matter if Sony was willing to pay the $4.3 billion dollars to acquire them. Because now, when it comes to revenue and when it comes to creative control, it would definitely be limited, because now if somebody owns you, they're probably going to come in at some point and say, hey, instead of doing this, do that. And if you don't do it, just so happens they might just cut budget, right? They just might end up, instead of having $100 million budget, now you got like 25, right? Just because you didn't agree with them. So that's usually how they get around the whole creative control type of tactics that they, try to use smoke and mirrors to let you think you're going to have all the creative freedom in the world. And then technically you do, but now the budget is cut because you didn't listen to them. So do you really have creative freedom, or are they just pulling the wool over your eyes to try to have you under them specifically, and you answer to them? So with that being said, if you don't know what Kadokawa is by now, it's basically a Japanese media conglomerate that owns FromSoftware, of course. And those are the developers behind Elden Ring and Armored Core 6, like I was mentioning. But the main thing you need to know is that this was founded in 1945 by Jinyoshi Kadokawa. So we now understand where the name comes from, as it was founded by Jinyoshi Kadokawa. So with that being said, there's really nothing else to get into. I mean, when it comes to Elden Ring, Night Reign is coming out May 30th, 2025. Definitely be on the lookout for that. When it comes to Armored Core, I don't know what type of sequel or DLC that's going to receive, but I would assume, based on the success of Armored Core, which ended up surpassing 3 million copies by July 2024 and surpassed 4 million copies by February 2025, this month, you would have to assume that they will have some type of DLC that come out for it, because even though it's not on Elden Ring's level, it definitely wasn't a flop. So we'll have to look out, or be on the lookout for future iterations of Armored Core. So with that being said, click my link tree in my bio. Let me know on one of my social medias. What do you think about Sony trying to buy Kadokawa? It ended up not going through because of the valuation price. And now, what IP would you like to see in live action? And do you believe that a Sony Kadokawa movie or anime will end up being any good, or do you think it will end up being a complete flop?